Oradain Your Reality, Joseph Donalan and Lucy Diamond.
One of the topics that we're going to discuss today is quantum entanglement. And, that may sound like a long word and it may sound like a complicated thing, but it's a fascinating topic. And what it really is it is the key to making an awful lot of what we talk about on this show. And just the whole realm of the metaphysical, it actually rationalizes that, if you will, within the laws of physics. So we're going to get into that because it's pretty interesting. And I promise you, I'm going to keep this at a high level. All of the evidence for the metaphysical was really kind of anecdotal, meaning that, you felt that it was happening, but you couldn't necessarily replicate it in a laboratory. Well, what's happening with our measurements in physics is they're getting finer and finer, and we're discovering things, and one of which, by the way, we'll be talking about a little bit tonight is quantum entanglement, that are beginning to show how this could work, how these links could work, and basically connecting the dots, if you will, between the world of the physical and the world of the metaphysical. There is this morphic field that is something that connects all of us. It's a vibration that permeates all. Maybe some of the easy examples I would give: if you took a train to New York City, for example, and you get out and you get off the train and you get into Grand Central Station, and you see the hustle and bustle, and you hear the jackhammers outside, and you hear the horns beeping, and you have people going so fast, and maybe now you get hungry and you have to go into a New York deli, and there's people in line, and everybody's giving their order so damn fast. Your blood pressure goes up, your adrenaline goes up, kicks in, and you actually become heightened, okay? And by the way, your brain waves get beta, and so everything is just geared up, just revved up, and because you're now part of a morphic field that's a high energy morphic field. And I'm not saying good or bad about it. It's just that you become part of it. It's almost impossible to have this very slow pace and manana, because you'd be so out of sync with that kind of morphic energy that's there. And this morphic field is beginning to have an effect, I think, on things in a very, very positive way. Our next guest tonight is Chris Keeler. He's all the way up in Canada, which is actually not far from where we're broadcasting. The studio is, I guess, about 4 or 5 hours north of there. But Chris is a holistic practitioner and an energy healer. He specializes in finding trouble areas in the body and what he calls the stressors within that area by using the pendulum and chart method of dowsing and so forth. And, just as many of our guests, Chris found this skill, which I'm interested to hear, serendipitously. In his case, he discovered this gift that he has after retiring from the print industry. Chris, I probably left a million things out of that, but hopefully that's at least somewhat of a summation for.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that I cover. As you said, I did evolve into this rather serendipitously. It was approximately 8 years ago my first wife passed away, and at that point in my life I was in the printing industry. I've been doing that for 30 years. It was a good time for me to retire, and the old saying goes, one door closes, another door opens, and sure enough, the door opened into this world of working with energy and doing healing work and finding my intuitiveness was a lot more than just singing the next song on the radio, turning the radio on, and there's a song. So it goes a lot deeper than that. I was able to develop my own way of doing things, and ultimately what I found is that if you could find out exactly what is causing the health problem within a person's body, and I do that by using a pendulum and a series of charts that I've developed, with the pendulum and your guides, my guides are the ones who direct the pendulum. When you find out that a person who has diabetes because they have a certain virus within their pancreas, and if you have the right ability or the right tools to vibrate out the frequency of that virus, much the same that tantric yoga would. Okay, what you're doing is you're just, it's almost like a opera singer singing at a frequency and shattering that frequency of the wine glass. So we're basically neutralizing or shattering the frequency of whatever it is that's causing the health problem in the body.
Interesting, and you're using some physical devices, if you will, to metaphysically, alter things.
The tools that I use, I use sacred geometry, which could be considered like pyramids. And I do have some tools I use that go way back into Sanskrit philosophy for moving negative energy out of the body. A lot of people look at me and say, well, why can't you just do it with your hands like somebody who would do, let's say, Reiki or quantum touch? And of course, that ability is there. But when you're using these specific tools to move the vibration, it works at such a deeper level at the quantum state within the body that it works a lot faster. People tend to get healings within about 3 or 4 sessions, depending on the problem, of course. And it's just that much more efficient. It does the job, it gets it done, and then we can move on to the next person. People who are looking for a healing, they don't want to spend hour after hour after hour trying different modalities. Here's something that works. It's been proven many times. My schedule is 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I work with people all over the world with this because we are working through quantum entanglement. If somebody is on Skype or on the phone with me, it's as if their frequency and their vibration is right there next to me, and I can move it out at the quantum level.
Excellent. I love your connection to that. The body, the physical body itself, is made up of 7 components, if you would. Skin, bone, glands, and so forth and so on. And they have a vibration when they're well. And it's really when the vibration it gets out of sync is what causes various kinds of illness. And I know I'm paraphrasing it, kind of generalizing, but in a sense, it's that. What Chris is doing, which is kind of interesting, is that you're bringing about some of these particular changes, I'll say externally, even though, that's probably too much of a dichotomy between internal and external. But I look at it more that you're, causing this or bringing this about. Once you understand what it is that the person needs, then you almost are giving the anecdote to that particular thing by creating a vibration that does this. Is that a fair description of each, would you say? Yeah, that's pretty darn close. The way I like to describe it is that I set the intent. Mm-hmm. So when I'm holding my tool, I've got this big elaborate pyramid that I've developed, and I hold it over your head. Let's say I find the herpes zoster virus within your skin causing shingles. When I hold the pyramid over your head and I give the intent to neutralize the herpes zoster virus at the quantum level within the energy in your body, through the etheric templates, through the entire aura, this vibration just goes away. It just vanishes. It neutralizes, and it doesn't exist anymore. Now, talking about the chakra system, I agree with Sanjay 100%, of course. But what I do is if let's say one of your chakras is out of balance, let's say the crown chakra is out of balance. What the depth that I go is I find out what is causing it to go out of balance. So I like to go right to the exact very root of the problem. Sometimes there are negative energies or attachments involved that are causing this to happen. It could be a trauma, could be some type of injury that could actually cause it to go out of whack. Could be your mental state. It could be negative thoughts that are going on. So when you move out the thing or the stressor that is causing the chakra to go out of balance or to close up, then it's that much more easier to realign that chakra, to open it, and for it to stay that way. Very interesting. Get back from the break is looking at things from a little bit more of a I guess natural physics standpoint. How does some of this stuff work? And we're actually going to have a little bit of a conversation, and I promise I'll keep it light, into quantum entanglement. You've heard that mentioned a few times tonight, and we're going to touch on that topic because within the realm of physics, if you would, certainly within the realm of quantum mechanics, we believe that this is how these things are occurring. I won't go through a whole history there, but basically, up until 1926, all versions of physics, all the ones accepted, were called classical physics, okay? And basically, really what that meant is that there were three attributes, if you would. One was local, one was deterministic, and one was objective. And it really means that local means that if something to affect something else, it had to be physically connected. You had to be able to see that, you'd be able to notice that. Deterministic meant if you knew everything, if you knew all of the parameters, which is, too complicated, but let's say you're trying to figure out the weather. If you knew everything, you'd be able to predict the weather. So it was deterministic. And the other is objective. And really what that means is that things exist in and of themselves. In other words, something is, okay, and it just is. You don't need anything else with it. It just is. Now, what happened is in 1926, and by the way, classical physics was starting to run into problems answering questions. So a bunch of smart physicists got together and came up with kind of a new paradigm, if you would. And this new paradigm, which is called quantum mechanics, and by the way, there's a number of flavors of quantum mechanics, but I won't get into that, but we're going to call it quantum mechanics. But even all the flavors have the same attributes, if you would. And instead of being local, it's non-local, and I'll tell you what that means in a second. And instead of being deterministic, it's probabilistic. And instead of being objective, it's subjective. Now, what's kind of interesting about that is in the non-local environment, it means that even if there's no connection between event A and event B, event A can affect event B. This is huge, okay, because honestly, any of the things we're talking about could not work if we had a classical physics view of the universe. In other words, if that was right, none of this stuff would work. Okay, the second thing is that things are not deterministic, they're probabilistic, and meaning that there's a probability that if you knew everything, you'd be able to deduce the answer, but you couldn't do it for sure. There's randomness, so that things don't always happen the way they would from a computational standpoint. And then the last is, and this is probably the most important, is things are not objective. This, by the way, this is what Eastern mystics understood for thousands and thousands of years. Things don't exist in and of themselves. They only exist in the eyes of the observer. So things are actually subjective. And that's why we have differences of opinions. Beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. Well, you know what? Reality is in the eyes of the beholder. So, and basically, that's the difference now. So now when you're into quantum mechanics, we have, now we have more and more discoveries. And one of the most important ones, at least for me, the most important one, is quantum entanglement. And quantum entanglement is really the key to a lot of stuff that's going on. But anyway, what quantum entanglement basically does is that it shows that it proves the theory, if you will. In other words, if you had, let's just say, an atom, and you had two electrons in the atom, and don't worry, I'm not going to get complicated about this, and you were somehow to be able to separate these two electrons in the atom, and you were to send one 1,000 miles away, and you keep the other one here. As soon as you change the polarity of one of them, the other one would instantaneously change. Even though there's no way at all that, and by the way, it wouldn't change at the speed of light, it would change at zero time. Okay, so it's going it's already defying what Einstein said, that nothing could travel faster than the speed of light. And secondly, it's not just instantaneously changing, but there's no connection that people can see. Okay? Well, this actually starts to get into a whole new realm. And by the way, that would explain, and I'm not going to take any just wild guesses and incorrect jumps, but that would begin to at least come up with a platform for beginning to understand how things like faith healing could work, how the power of prayer could work, and how that we can actually modify the outcome of future events by meditating on them and concentrating on them. So it begins to explain an awful lot of things. And I mean, we're going to actually talk about quantum entanglement in more detail on another show. perhaps, and we'll get into it more, but I wanted to at least have folks understand the importance of that, because now physicists are agreeing that that's how physics works, so that things can affect other things even though they're not connected, and when they are affected, they change, and then they in turn change other things. That gets back to Lucy's question about meditating for world peace, and it gets back to Sanjez's question about, being able to have the right, mantra to be able to affect certain parts of the body. And they obviously talked to what Chris has talked about being able to, understand and tune, if you will, a new vibration to fix, whatever the particular illness that the person has. And all of these things and many other things that we talk about in the show are made possible by quantum mechanics in general and quantum entanglement more specifically. So I promise you I'd talk a little bit about that, but I know we've got many more topics. And Chris, I think you were just speaking a little bit about how this would all this would work. But I know we also Lucy mentioned we have a couple of questions. Lucy, what was the first question that you had?
Yep, with the idea of vibration and healing, it would lead one to believe that if you can figure out the vibration of a healthy body part, you could heal it with sound or, something similar. It's kind of like the experiments Tesla did with frequencies.
Yes. Well, let me first respond to that, and then let me throw that out to our guests. The answer is absolutely. There's no question about that. There's actually been a lot happening in the area of sound therapy, and also you're right. It's a vibration, but remember now, sound itself has a certain frequency range, and it really even if you get down to ultra high frequencies of sound and ultra low ones, it's a small spectrum. So that works, but it is limited in the sense of where the sound vibrations fit, because really they only go from about 15, maybe 10 or so cycles per second, all the way up to about 20,000, 22,000, and then after that, there's no sound that you're hearing. And that's an extremely small portion of the whole electromagnetic vibration range. However, that is very true. And what you're doing there is you're resonating the body part with a vibration that will help tune it. Just exactly like if you had, keeping with sound, if you had two similar guitars in a room, and you pluck the string of one of the guitars, the adjacent guitar would start vibrating. That same string would start vibrating, and the more that string was in tune with the string being plucked, the more it would vibrate. So that's what they call resonance, and that's what that basically what it is becoming entrained. Okay, so it's becoming part of it. Here's an interesting. Another observation. If you took let's say a bunch of grandfather clocks and you put them in a room, you put a bunch of grandfather clocks in a room, closed the door, came back 3 or 4 or 5 hours later, you'd see every single pendulum, and I know, Chris, you talk about pendulums, would be syncopated. In other words, it'd all be going exactly the same way. Every single one of those grandfather clocks would be going the same way. And you say, oh my gosh, what's going on there? And really what it is that each one is sending a small vibration out, and eventually they get entrained, and that becomes more and more of a powerful system. So then if you put let's say you had 10 of them, you put the 11th one in, it would very quickly become part of that, because it's now part of this morphic field, if you would, this energy field. Just kind of like what Lucy talked about, if enough people were meditating. So the more you get going in a direction, the more powerful that vibration, and the more it will work. So sound, sorry, long answer, but sound certainly is a way to tune something that's wrong with the body, if you knew what that was. If you use sound, Chris, in your practice?
When I work with radionics is a use of frequency. So, like I said before, if you use the analogy of a opera singer singing at a frequency and shattering a wine glass, when we use radionics to, let's say, remove the frequency of a virus from the liver, now the liver can go back to its normal resting state of, let's say, 325 hertz. So you have to find the frequency that's bringing down the frequency of the liver. Otherwise, the liver would be perfect if there was nothing bringing the frequency down, whether it's virus, whether it's mental state, whether it's, whatever. It doesn't matter, whatever. Something's bringing the frequency of the liver down. So we find out what's causing it to go out of harmony with the body, out of harmony with itself, and then the liver can start to go back to its normal state.
Excellent.